Tom Schwartz walked onto the BravoCon stage expecting a normal panel and accidentally dropped the biggest confession of his entire love life. In front of thousands of fans, cameras rolling, he blurted out that his new girlfriend, Kiana, is the love of my life. A moment so raw and unfiltered that even he froze, instantly realizing he wasn't supposed to say it. And the most surprising part, he tried to take it back, but couldn't, because as messy as it sounded, it was real. And it might just be the beginning of the wildest chapter he stepped into since Vanderpump Rules. Tom Schwartz has never been the kind of Bravo star who hides his heart. Fans have watched him stumble through love, heartbreak, and everything in between since the early days of Vanderpump Rules. From awkward fights to emotional breakdowns, Tom's romantic life has always been on display, sometimes more than he ever wanted. And after his public split with longtime partner Katie Maloney, it seemed like he was drifting, unsure of what he wanted, but desperate to feel something real again. That's why this moment at BravoCon matters. Tom isn't someone who casually drops the words, "love of my life," especially not after everything he's been through. When he says something that vulnerable, that unfiltered, it hits differently. This isn't the Tom who used to second-guess every emotion. This is a man who's been through public heartbreak, worked on himself, launched a podcast, and tried to rebuild his life from scratch. So when he steps on stage and accidentally reveals that this new woman, Kiana, has completely shaken up his world, people pay attention because it suggests Tom might finally be stepping into a new version of himself, one that's ready for something real, even if he's terrified of it. When Tom Schwartz walked onto the Peaks and Valleys panel at BravoCon 2025, nobody expected the night to turn into one of his most vulnerable moments ever. The room was buzzing, fans were shouting, castmates were joking around, just the usual Bravo energy. But the second Tom started talking about his personal life, something shifted. His voice softened, his body language changed, and suddenly he wasn't the playful, guarded Tom people were used to seeing on camera. It happened fast. He mentioned his new girlfriend, Kiana, with this dreamy look in his eyes, and then the words just slipped out. "She's the love of my life." The audience erupted. Some screamed, some gasped, some laughed like they couldn't believe what they just heard. And Tom? He froze. His eyes widened. He looked around like he was trying to find the nearest exit, and then he whispered, almost under his breath, "I wasn't supposed to say that out loud." It was the kind of moment you could feel in the room. A mix of shock, excitement, and a little secondhand panic. Tom Schwartz, the guy who usually tiptoes around his feelings, had just dropped a full-blown love confession on stage in front of thousands. No script, no hesitation, just pure emotion that slipped out before he could stop himself. The moment Tom stepped off that stage, the reality of what he had said started to hit him. Cameras were still everywhere, fans were trailing behind, and he looked like a man replaying every word in his head on a loop. By the time he sat down with people, he was already trying to untangle the mess he had made, or at least soften the impact. He admitted he was in love, but the phrase "love of my life" clearly haunted him. He joked he didn't mean for it to come out that way, almost like the words had escaped on their own. Then he dropped a line that showed exactly how nervous he was. He said he was 100% convinced Kiana might leave him after hearing it. Tom kept apologizing, stumbling over his own explanations, as if the more he talked, the deeper he sank. He insisted he didn't mean to say it on stage, then immediately contradicted himself by saying she really is the love of his life. It just felt scary to admit it so publicly. It was classic Tom, honest to a fault, emotional without realizing it, and completely overwhelmed by a feeling he couldn't hide if he tried. For Tom Schwartz, saying "love of my life" wasn't just a slip, it was a risk, a huge one. After years of having every relationship dissected on national television, Tom knows better than anyone how quickly public pressure can ruin something fragile. And this new romance with Kiana is still in the early stages, still tender, still something he's clearly trying to protect. One unexpected confession can change everything, especially when millions of fans turn it into a headline within minutes. That fear showed in every word he said backstage. He wasn't scared of being in love. He was scared of what the world might do with that information. Tom's been bruised by public scrutiny before, and he knows how fast a sweet moment can turn messy. Opening his heart again means exposing himself to the same cycle of opinions, criticism, and speculation that nearly broke him last time. But here's the interesting part. Even with all that fear, he didn't take it back. Not once. If anything, he doubled down. He admitted Kiana is the love of his life. He just didn't want to overwhelm her or let the spotlight swallow something he actually cares about. That kind of vulnerability is rare for Tom, and it says more about this relationship than any Instagram post ever could. So what comes next? Fans are already wondering how this will play out on the Valley now that Tom is confirmed to return. Will the cameras capture the early stages of this romance? Will Kiana Kiana appear at all? And is this the moment Tom finally steps into a healthier chapter of his life, away from the chaos he's been trapped in for years? One thing is clear, this isn't just another Bravo storyline. It feels like an emotional turning point, one that could redefine Tom's future, both on-screen and off. And the next move he makes might reveal just how serious this love story really is. Tom Schwartz didn't plan to make headlines at BravoCon, but sometimes the most unforgettable moments are the ones no one rehearses. One unfiltered confession, one flash of honesty, and suddenly the world saw a version of Tom he rarely lets slip. A man who's terrified, hopeful, and completely swept up in someone new. Whether that moment was a mistake or a breakthrough depends on how the story unfolds from here, but it's clear this chapter is different. Kiana isn't just another name in Tom's dating history. She's someone who's pulled out a side of him he thought he'd lost, a part that still believes in something real. And despite all the fear, despite his panic backstage, he never tried to walk it back. He never pretended he didn't mean it. That alone says more than any BravoCon panel ever could. What happens next is anyone's guess. Maybe this love story grows quietly behind the scenes, or maybe it becomes one of the most talked about arcs on the Valley. But for now, one thing stands out. Tom Schwartz finally said what he's been feeling, even if it slipped out by accident. And sometimes the truth only comes out when you're not trying to hide it.